So what they do, so when they did it, you've got an art, well, like what they talk about hanging your.
Stephen, I've changed my mind.
My dinner's in my clothes. That's the natural bend in your back, so when they.
Good evening. Welcome to the Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting for February 28th. We call the meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. And the first order of business is approval of the February 8th minutes.
So move. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Oh, that was the budget hearing on February 8th. Thank you. Sorry. Actually, we'll do that as the February 8th minutes, because that's what I said, was the February 8th minutes. Now we'll do the February 8th budget hearing minutes.
So move.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that one's unanimous. And then on the January 25th minutes, we had a minor correction to them. It was, when we voted on them at our last meeting, there was a mistake in the vote for the approval of the updated regional agreement. So we need to revote the minutes as corrected that were sent to you for January 25th.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you. And next up is public comment. Is anybody here for public comment? Yes, come on up. Oh, could you please come to the podium? Sorry, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
You're welcome.
My name is Marianne Campagna. I am a resident of Harwichport. I worked in the Provincetown schools for many, many years as a school social worker. Before that, I was a clinical therapist on the Cape, working with children, adolescents, and families. The reason I'm here tonight is I am beyond deeply distressed about what's happening regarding violence in our schools and guns and the NRA, and we could go on and on, but I don't want this to be political. I'm here to say, please let mental health professionals work in your schools. If you don't have a school social worker, please hire one. If you can't afford that, I understand it. I've been involved in schools. Contract with outside mental health agencies. They can help you. Contract with a social worker who could come into the school and meet with your children. We're on the front line, social workers and therapists, psychotherapists. We know what signs to look for. We know how to assess. And if we need any help, we know who to go to. So please, please think about this. If you have an ad hoc committee that might be coming around school and violence, I would love to volunteer for that. Also, look at your curriculums. There's a wonderful curriculum that I use that's very up and active at a Bridgewater University called MARC, Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center. They will give you an enormous amount of help. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good evening, Melissa McGuire, Director of Student Services. I did just thank you for that, certainly. We do have MARC, and we have MARC trainers at each of our schools, and we do use the MARC curriculum and the Peacemaker curriculum. So I just wanted to be able to share that we
Thank
do
you.
have that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Is there any other-buddy here for public comments? All right. We will move on to our student representatives report with Ms. Boyle. Hello.
Hello, my name is Grace Boyle. I'm a senior, and I'm extremely excited to tell you about the great things happening here at Monomoy. At the end of January, the honors government classes went to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute in Boston to participate in the statewide We the People speech competition. Monomoy placed 4th overall, which is extremely impressive, and students Abby Sullivan, Kyra Stovall, Joe Potter, and Jason Zhao won an award for their specific unit speech. Their hard work and oratory talent are both extremely impressive. On Friday, February 9th, and Saturday, February 10th, 23 juniors dedicated their time to be trained in the Game Change program, which is the Patriots Anti-Violence Partnership. The purpose of this training was to raise awareness of gender violence prevention strategies and show how these students can play a critical role in creating a positive social climate here at MRHS. The multitude of scenarios and activities allowed the students to have a respectful and mature and open dialogue about the issues going on in school. We are very proud to have leaders like this among us. Mr. Burkhead has been very dedicated to allowing students to use their voices. He has demonstrated this in many ways. This includes Shark Bites, a jawsome activity that allowed students to anonymously answer questions he posed on pieces of white poster board. Questions asked about cell phone usage, teachers, the culture of the school, and more. Now these posters are on Main Street for anyone to add to. Additionally, the second think tank is scheduled for tomorrow. This is another outlet for students to make themselves heard, which is very important to us. As he said, adults are always talking about how students learn without any input from the students. We have to change that. The program of studies night was Thursday before vacation. I was here to talk about the National Art Honor Society. Parents, my parents included, really enjoy being able to learn about what their own children are learning about. Both boys and girls basketball clinched tournament spots and ended their seasons proudly. Seniors Maddie Leonard, Nick Meehan, Eli Nickerson, Jake Wisniewski, Max Liska, Tommy Graham, Nathan Amaker, and Connor Santoni were all honored at their respective senior nights. The Shark Tank, also known as the infamous student section, was there to support the boys last night. Although they lost, they put up an amazing fight. It was great to see how huge the crowd was because it demonstrates our student body's school spirit. Mock Trial won our league for the first time in 8 years. We are heading off to regionals this weekend to compete in Worcester. Here we will compete in 2 trials that will determine whether or not we continue on in the competition. There are 15 other teams in the state competing at this level. Our group is very young, comprised of mostly sophomores and 3 seniors, but our hard work has shown. We are eager to go compete at a higher level. The Global Studies program went to the Dominican Republic over vacation. The views were spectacular, whether we be looking at the beautiful mountains, the field of vacas, which are cows, people were a big fan of them, or the colorful murals that paint every inch of the developing cities. But the culture of community is definitely what I will miss most. Every time I looked up or did anything, I could not help but think, wow, this is the most beautiful thing that I will ever see, or the greatest, most memorable thing that I will ever do. And then I would see or do or learn or hear something else, and the same thought would occur. Being part of a culture that was so unique, appreciative, and friendly was so refreshing, especially to us 23 Americans that were welcomed with the same accepting, supportive attitude that Dominicans use towards their own friends, family, and neighbors. The things that I saw and learned here could not be talked about for hours, and learning through experience is so important. However, the Global Studies program is preparing their own presentation about solely the trip, and this will include much more detail regarding our cultural experience, our activities, and our service, wherein we worked with students aged 5 to 7 who only speak Spanish. We taught them about water safety, cleanliness, and the water cycle, all in Spanish. And I take AP Latin, so you can imagine how much I struggled with that. But for now, I just want to sincerely thank you for this opportunity and this trip that was truly unforgettable. Also regarding international relations, Key Club and Stand have struck up a partnership with the Sega Girls School in Tanzania. This is a school that provides an encouraging and resourceful environment for girls who would not be able to get an education any other way because of the social constraints in Tanzania. Perhaps this could be the next Global Studies trip. Also, the musical All Shook Up opens 2 weeks from today on March 14th. As usual, the performance is expected to be amazing. The rehearsals go to 7 o'clock every night this week. These students have dedicated such a large part of their time, which is very minimal with homework and other engagements. Obviously, it's performed entirely by students, but also the lighting, sound, and stage are all managed by students, which creates many avenues to get involved. I urge you to come to see the show at least once. It's going to be great. Thank you very much for your time. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Ooh.
Thank you.
How many kids went on the We the People?
I actually am not sure, but I can get that to you.
Did they have full team?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It was at least the whole class. I think it was probably like 30 kids. Yeah.
It's an impressive thing to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is recognitions with Mr. Carpenter, the Superintendent Scholar for 2017-2018.
All right, so we have our annual presentation of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees Certificate of Academic Excellence. And this year, our recipient is Francesca Barr. And the write-up on Francesca that her counselor has given me states, every now and then, educators have the opportunity to witness something extraordinary, a student that is a once-in-a-lifetime student. Francesca is that Monomoy student. She has amassed outstanding accomplishments in academic success, global research, internship, leadership, determination, and civic involvement. She is the definition of a true scholar, unique in every way. Francesca demonstrates a tremendous intellectual capacity to acquire information, comprehend abstract concepts, and puts forth the effort necessary to maintain an A in every AP course offered at Monomoy. She is brilliant, motivated, supremely dedicated to achieving success. Because of scheduling restrictions, Francesca took advantage of the dual enrollment program at Cape Cod Community College to complete an AP calculus course, which is the equivalent of 2 years of high school calculus. She accomplished this during the summer break while working 2 part-time jobs and participating in an internship program. Francesca is one of the founding members of Monomoy's new Global Studies program, which offers students the opportunity to go beyond the high school curriculum to make connections to the larger world. She will graduate with a Global Studies diploma with distinction. She's currently completing her Global Studies capstone project on how schizophrenia is treated in developing countries. This accurately demonstrates her capacity to comprehend some of the most complex issues using higher order thinking. Francesca's activities and leadership roles include treasurer of her class, treasurer of the National Honor Society, president of the National Art Honor Society, secretary of the Key Club, and captain of the girls' varsity soccer team. She sought out and participated in 2 internship programs last summer at Cape Cod Hospital and a research intern discovering the negative sides of social media. Her teammates spoke about her at their annual soccer banquet and said, "Francesca has a rare focus, drive, and determination that when combined with her intelligence contributes immensely to the success of our team." She also managed to hustle 42 pizzas out of Stop and Shop for a class fundraiser. Some things are really important. Francesca's effort and determination will ensure success for her future. Her charm and persuasion will ensure she never goes hungry.
I think she puts us all to shame. Yeah. Wow. That's very impressive. Congratulations. And you have more for us, Mr. Carpenter.
I do. The next thing we want to do is when we were at our last school committee meeting, I had talked about we were in the process of interviewing for the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. We had over 20 applicants for the position. We interviewed 6 outstanding candidates, and 1 candidate rose to the top. That candidate, his name is Mark Smith. He is a familiar face and name in the district. It was a little humbling for me as the superintendent to walk around with Mark yesterday and take him around to the schools, because I would walk into every school building and there were teachers running up to Mark and hugging him. And I would be sitting there going, nobody ever hugs the superintendent, but Mark walks into every building and there's somebody at the doorstep waiting for him. But it really speaks to the impact that he had several years ago when he was with Harwich Public Schools as the elementary curriculum supervisor, and since we didn't cross paths, Mark was leaving just as I arrived here as superintendent, and for the past 5 years has been the principal now of the Forestdale Elementary School in Sandwich. So I have extended Mark the offer of being our next curriculum coordinator. He has really big shoes, not that Carla has huge feet, but he has really big shoes to fill. So I'd like to just introduce Mark as our curriculum coordinator or Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and Mark will be starting with us come July 1st.
Thank you. Good evening. Some of your faces are familiar from my time here 5 years ago, and I just wanted to say that I'm very excited about this opportunity. And as Scott mentioned yesterday, being able to go around and visit all the schools was sort of the final. It was a big decision, to decide to leave a job that I love and explore a new opportunity. But yesterday really sealed the deal for me. Not only to see old familiar faces, but just to see some of the great things that have happened in the time that I've been left. And I mean, just walking through this building alone was enough to really energize somebody and get them excited. But just to see all the great things that were going on in the other schools as well. And I'm really excited about seeing what impact I can have in moving this position forward and taking the mantle from somebody who's done an amazing job with it. And having worked closely with Carla during my time here, I'm excited about what impact I can bring to move things forward. So I'm really excited working with the committee and continuing to take what is already a great school district to the next level. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just
Two big ones.
Just last but not least, I just want to sort of tag on to what our guest said during public comment. When we have situations like the shooting in Parkland, I really appreciate both of our police departments. I was out of the state at the time, but was getting emails right off the bat, and we had both police departments really stepping up. I had a nice opportunity this afternoon during our early release for the teachers. Sergeant Massey was there at the middle school doing a complete refresher and re-education of all of our teachers on our lockdown procedures, and we'll have the police they'll be coming to our next school committee meeting, which is next Thursday, to give this group a little refresher on what we train our teachers and train our students to do. So we'll have that to come forward. But I really appreciate just the efforts that both departments have made.
Thank you. All right. Now we will move into reports and discussions, and first there is the Key Club Annual Conference in Springfield, Mass. Hi.
Hello, I'm Katie Kelly. I'm an administrative assistant here at the high school, and I also act as the Key Club advisor. We are asking permission to attend the District Educational Conference. This would be our second year attending. It's an overnight trip in Springfield, Massachusetts. We had a great time last year. There were a lot of workshops for the students and myself to attend, and it's great to meet the other clubs, and the kids really develop a lot of leadership skills. But it's a great opportunity, and we'd love to attend again.
Thank you. Any questions?
How many students will be attending?
About 20.
Any other questions? Mr. DeVol?
I move that we approve the Key Club field trip to Springfield, March 6th to the 8th of this year.
Second. Any further discussion? Ms. Stokes?
I think it would be helpful for any that might not know what Key Club is.
Key Club? So it's a student-run, it has a student government, so Grace is actually the president, and Cheska is the secretary.
We should make them get up in it.
I know. Yeah, so they're the officers of the club, and they organize fundraising events in the community. We raise money for international groups, and it's just a great way to get involved in our community and the school community.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Right, and we have another trip, the 2019 Spanish Exchange Cultural Trip. Hello.
Hello. Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Hoff, and this is my sidekick, Leslie Chiswick. And we are here once again to ask permission to run the school-to-school exchange with our partner school in Vigo, Spain. We've been invited back because it was such a phenomenal experience for both sides, and so we would be Our proposal is to leave February 16th and come back March 2nd. This year, we'd like to head to Barcelona. Last year, we went to Madrid, and that's mostly because, if you see behind me, we have a student who would like to take the trip again, and we thought it would be a really great opportunity to try a different city. So we have a lot of repeat interest and also sibling interest. We just thought that might be a nice opportunity to expand the horizons there. This trip also will be taking an overnight train in first class with locking doors from Barcelona to Vigo. This is also part of our curriculum. I really like the train experience as well as the flight experience. It just really brings the curriculum to the forefront, brings everything, brings the student outside of the classroom. And I think the learning really comes to life with these unique experiences. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I think when you came last time and the students presented, I think it was pretty clear how impactful it was for them to have the exchange. And I think that was because the students from Spain came here first, correct? And just watching that, I can't remember if they came back after they went to Spain. I think it was just when the Spanish students were here. That it was just very impactful just having that time together. So, very lovely. Mr. Russell.
I echo Nancy. I had a grandson that joined you last year as a 9th grader, and it was a highlight of his schooling. And the boy that stayed at his home and vice versa, they're still in touch. So what a great imprint that he had on him as a young high school boy having that exposure. So I thank you for all the effort that goes into organizing this and dotting every I and T. So great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody care to make a motion?
I move to approve this.
Thank you.
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Start planning.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we need to bring them back again next time they come.
Oh, we will, November.
All right, thank you. And next on our agenda is the Chatham Elementary School progress towards their school improvement plan. Dr. Millie.
Good evening, everyone. Just going to open the slides.
Go.
Oh. Okay, so I am Robin Millen, principal of Chatham Elementary School. I was invited to come here tonight, not to share our school-wide improvement plan as a whole, we'll do the update for that in January, but to share with the public and also with the committee an activity that the administrative team is conducting this year on recommendation of Superintendent Carpenter. And basically, if you look at the first slide, it is an opportunity for us as building level administrators to talk with our peers and our colleagues within our administrative team to share and focus on one of our school-wide improvement goals based on almost a very clear protocol of dialogue. We have gone through one entire round of this already, and we are on our second roll, so this is my second time doing it for the administrative team. I apologize to those who are sitting in here, I've already heard this, but we wanted to share with you what this looks like and also what we're doing. It's affording us great opportunity to share and receive critical feedback on what we're doing, both in the leadership areas, but also in our day-to-day practices, moving our goals forward. It's allowing us to hear what other people are doing in other buildings and say, wow, that's a great idea, let's do that, maybe that's going to forward our goals a little bit more. So it's a great opportunity, in my opinion, and I would think the team would agree with me. If you look at the slide that's up there now, I would love to tell you that we do this in 8 slides. Sorry, I already heard somebody wanted to get out of here a little bit early today. I will be more brief, probably, and I say this lovingly to my colleagues than most of my peers, but it is not 8 slides, but it does follow this format. we do the introduction, we go through our school-wide goal to provide context, to tell you what we're going to focus in on our dialogue here today. We talk about our key levers and our objectives in that school-wide goal and the objectives that we're going to target in the discussion. We talk about, we share the progress we've made, and again, it revolves around data. So, you know, I touched on that today, but I won't go into that in a large amount with this situation, but I will touch on it. And then we talk about short and long-term steps, and that's really where we get a lot of that feedback from. And finally, there's always a reflection at the end, and that's a leadership reflection. We tell the team what we have reflected based off the work that we did to share with our teams, but also to say, okay, now that we've looked at this holistically, what do we think needs to come next? So I'm the first one to share you from my colleagues in the next couple of months. Okay. So the goal that I presented to our team on Tuesday was our SIP goal in the Chatham Elementary School plan that is a focus area of instruction. It's to provide students with research-based instruction as an effective means of raising student achievement. It has 4 objectives. The first time I presented, I talked about objective number 1. When I presented on Tuesday, and what I will do with you all today is objectives 3 and 4. Objective number 3 basically says that in this past 3 years now, Chatham Elementary School is on their 3rd year of a 3-year plan. So we have been providing opportunities for academic support for students. We call this response to intervention. It's a pretty global word that we use in our business, who qualify for early intervention across grade levels. And then the other objective that we've been working on to forward that goal is to continue the collaboration with our professional learning communities so that we can provide grade level and then what we call vertical across grade level opportunities for our teams to plan instruction, look at assessments, plan assessments, monitor pacing, analyze data, and to identify students in need of reteaching or remediation, and design targeted interventions. So those would be the 2 that you hear me kind of chat about today. So for our key levers that we identified from the school council and obviously have been working on for several years, again, contextually, it fits very well into the Massachusetts tier system with support. So that's a pretty elaborate diagram in the middle, but our levers align with what Massachusetts expects school systems to have as kind of a system of support for all of our students. And again, I'll talk about the different systems. So in the lever number 4, or objective number 4, you see it matches up to the universal screening and the progress monitoring. And then objective 3 matches up to the research-based interventions and assessment practices. So I know you know I love data, but all of our school-wide improvement plans, and this is, I feel like I'm kind of saying, this is what we've done and this is where we are, but again, it's to provide context for you. So when we created our school-wide improvement plan, we took all the data that we had at hand. And this was 3 years ago, remember, before DESE came in with a comp review, before Massachusetts, you know, they left MCAS, they went to Park, they went now back to MCAS. So we had whatever information we could analyze, and the school council did a wonderful job on looking it over. When DESE came in and did our comp review in 2016, right, they used all that same stuff and they really validated what we had already put in our plan. It was so liberating, I think, in a lot of ways, and it was so exciting for the school council and the staff in general to say, hey, we're not the only ones that see this. You know, and it also was, we were able to say to the state, hey, we see this, it's already in our plan. So there's the contextual information that DESE did, but also what we had pulled from as well. And again, I'm not going over all this data with you tonight, but I am happy. I love to talk about that. You can come on in, email me, stop by, anything that you would like to do, and I would be happy to go over a little more thoroughly if you'd like. The other thing that we had the opportunity to do since we wrote this plan is, and again, this is context, but when DESE came in, they gave us some very strong recommendations as to how we could forward not only the district, but our individual schools. So one of them was linked really well to this goal, which is analyzing student performance and other data systematically. And that is to inform a lot of planning process, but also our goals. So the individual items underneath, I'm going to touch on as I talk about our next steps, just so you can see the alignment between all of our information. So the other data that has come in since our original goal, and again, to provide context to you, is the MCAS data. And again, this is very hard for us to kind of weed out, and I'm going to go back one slide, I think. Because again, Massachusetts has changed their standardized assessment over the last 3 years. So we have been able to take now 2 years of data and watch the growth. And I know Superintendent Carpenter has shared the information on this. But if you look at Objective 4, it talks about data across different areas. So the MCAS data is definitely a definite part where we sat down this past year and said, okay, where are we? Where are we with this goal? Where are we with what our students are doing? And MCAS is one moment in time, but like you know, in grade 4, we showed growth over grade 3 above the state average. We are still running at grade level or just below grade level as far as the proficiency in comparison to the state, both in math and English language arts. And we, in grade 3, obviously we don't have the growth data, but we are also in that same situation. So the progress on this goal is the teams take this information, and not only do they drill down on that historical kind of global look to it, but then they take each item and take each child and say, okay, where in our instruction do we see deficits because our kids are not performing well? Or where do we see strengths in our instruction, and where are kids performing well? And we're adjusting and monitoring and planning all of our instruction in those manners. So it's just one more piece of contextual data for you to understand that it lines up to objective number 4, and we're continually progress monitoring it. The data that I love the most, and because it is most consistent for us, at least since my tenure here in Chatham Elementary, is the MAP data. So on this slide, and again, I'm not going to go over all of it, but the 4 columns that are the same color, that kind of light purple, are MAP, our NWEA, Measured Academic Progress testing that you approved and we've been doing now for almost 2 years. We're able to now watch this data across longitudinal cohorts. So at the top of this chart is our current kindergarten. The bottom of the chart is our current 5th grade. And if you look apples to apples or oranges to oranges, however, whatever fruit you like best, and you kind of look across, we can see some trends. We can analyze progress over time. We can also, with the mathematics data, we are looking at our effectiveness of instruction, especially with the new program with Math and Focus. What grade levels are having stronger academic achievement in that? Where are we not? And one of the great takeaways that we do when we analyze this data as a professional learning community is, for like the math data, we know that in some grade levels, the instructional philosophy of Math and Focus is innovating more quickly. You know, whenever you take on a new program, you have an implementation dip, you have teachers that have to learn new styles of teaching and new instructional methods. And one of the reasons that we chose a Math and Focus program was not necessarily because of the program, but because the offering of the instructional strategies that it offered. So where we're seeing more evidence of that implementation, we're seeing a very high and quick achievement rise for those grades. So what we're doing with that is now we're vertical PLCing between those grade levels, where they're sitting together and saying, where are you getting that success from? Where are you seeing that? You know, how come that's happened, and why are we here, and why are you there? And they're sharing across their PLC teams and sharing those growth modules and those successes and celebrating them, and also learning from each other. So your innovation, you know, when you have an innovation, you always have the ones that are right out there and they do it, and then the other ones kind of watch a little bit more and say, oh, if they're doing well, okay, I'm going to join in, and that's where we're at. So we're watching that with this data as well. The other thing is, and again, it relates same to Objective 4 of the professional learning communities, is we're watching it for reading as well. So globally across this district, we have the initiative of the strategic plan of the close reading instruction. So we're watching the data and the growth data. Now, MAP only tells you what a student is ready to learn. It doesn't tell you what the achievement is or what they've already mastered, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're watching where are we not doing as well, where are we doing well, same structural analysis that we did in mathematics, but we're watching it in comparison to the MCAS as well. How is the MAP data aligning to the MCAS data, and where do we need to strengthen instruction, where do we have to apply interventions, supports, and enrichment. We realized really quickly along our plan that we had put into our plan some very clear language about interventions and remediation, but we hadn't targeted our enrichment kids. So you'll see in a minute what we've adjusted that for. So this is that idea of that response to intervention. And again, this is a very complicated system that we have put into play at Chatham Elementary School and as well as at Harwich Elementary School, where response to intervention is basically a research-based intervention system. And it goes on that little triangle up in that left-hand corner where at Tier 1, all students get qualified education, instructional, evidence-based, research-based. All kids get that. Typical. Nobody is out of that instruction. Yeah, at the second level, Tier 2, we call that. It's a smaller group. Those are our kids that are targeted for supports. And the only difference between the tiers is the evidence-based instruction that happens, the number of times that they get that intervention, and the size of the intervention. And then when you go up to Tier 3, it gets a little bit smaller. It's a smaller group of children that need more intensive supports. So we are tracking the percentage of kids inside those groupings based off a triangulation of data between their MAP data, the information from assessments that we do inside of our classrooms, and then any other information that the classroom teachers want to bring forward to us that says, we think this child needs intervention based on the information that we're receiving. And this is kind of complicated. I said this to the administrative team too. It's complicated. I didn't know how to express this, but you can see we're tracking enrichment data, but you're looking for green arrows is really what you're looking for. We're looking for, even if they're going down or up, that's progress. Okay, so we want our tiered intervention percentages to go down, so green arrows are good, and we want our enrichment arrows. And I also want to qualify, enrichment isn't like gifted and talented enrichment. Our professional learning communities, again, for Objective 4, revolve on 4 questions. What do we want our students to learn? How are we going to get them to learn what we want them to learn? What do we do if they struggle with the not yet? Not that they can't, but what the not yet. We're still waiting for them to show the mastery of that. And then what do we do when they understand it, and how do we dig deeper in their learning? So that's what we mean by enrichment. So we're watching those mastery and that information, and where are the children that are being in those supports. The other thing that just so for your contextual knowledge to know, is we were able to, based off the data that we had 3 years ago, take 2 moments in time in our schedule, which are about a half an hour in length. They're throughout the day. It's similar to JOSM and similar to the seminar that the administrators from the middle school and high school have told you about. However, theirs are at the same moment of time. Ours are throughout the day so that we can push all of our support personnel in at that moment of time. So there's 2 times in each grade level's day where we push our staff in, as many people are available, and say, okay, these children need intervention here. They have a goal, they have an objective, they have a plan, they have a progress monitoring set up through our RTI group that does that, and it's all recorded. We progress monitor them for 8 to 10, 12 weeks. We watch for growth and progress, and we do that with enrichment as well. So any child that has mastery, we put a plan in place and we push in support. So it's really nice. It's a little different model than what you see at the middle school and high school, but it's affording us to make some really key progress and really make some big changes on some of these numbers. So, and we also see some trends where we see some red arrows. So what's happening at that moment in time for those kids? Why is the intervention going up instead of down? Or why is our enrichment groupings going down instead of up? What happened in the last unit? What didn't we attend to? What do we have to change for our pacing? So all of that information is coming out of our PLC discussions, and obviously are feeding into this this particular goal. Not many of them, but the other thing that I just want to show you is, see the fall data here in reading? See the reds? This was a very good aha moment for us this past fall when we took the data for our intervention and our enrichments, and we saw the decline there in fall. It tells us we need to do something more over the summer. There's some summer regression, and we have a great reading program over the summer. We don't talk about math over the summer. I know children, it's summer, and we want kids to have summer, and we get that. So we need to think a little bit more collaboratively, and we know that, about how do we make learning fun in the summer, and how do we reach out a little bit more to our families to know it's important, that so we don't have that regression, so that we have to go back up and then go higher again. So we made that analysis this year. Now, I talked a lot about reading, math, and language arts, right? But this doesn't only happen in ELA and math. I didn't want everybody to think we're just teaching 2 subjects. We do this with all of our subjects as needed. We also do it with our social, emotional, and our behavioral data. So we do the same process. We analyze data in the same way. We look at all the information that's coming into us through our PBIS system, through our referrals, through any other data that the classroom teacher brings to us. And what we targeted really for reflection purposes this year and progress data this year was anything that related to new initiatives that we've done this year. For example, the change of the start time, or the PBIS system, and making sure that that system is still offering us progress, doing what it's supposed to be doing. So over on the right-hand side, you see some of the analysis that the teams have done. For example, there's a 36% decrease in office referrals in the first 4 months of the school year. Do we directly relate that to our change in school time, to the PBIS? Probably a combination of both, because when you look at the next one, office referrals in the first half of the school day are down by 56%, okay? And in the second half, they're down by 5%. So we know traditionally in elementary schools, we teach a lot of our content in the morning. Language arts is usually always scheduled in the morning. Math is typically scheduled at least partly in the morning. So that's a really low, and if you think that every office referral takes 30 minutes of time for the child involved, plus all the disruption to the learning environment that happens before they get to the referral part of it, that's pretty significant data to keep an eye on and making sure that we're watching that. Average office referrals, and some of these numbers seem weird because we track referrals even if they're at a level 2, which is not an office referral, it's a classroom managed, so some of this is looks a little wonky, but I can explain it if you want. But average office referrals were just over the national mean last year and just under the mean this year so far. And then again, for those intervention and supports, we have 7 students right now currently at Tier 3 for intervention with behavioral goals on their RTI plan. And that's compared to 13 that we had last year at the same time. So that's a definite, almost about 50% decrease. So I just wanted you to be aware that it's not just academic data that we're triangulating for these 2 goals. Short-term and next-term steps. Now, again, I told you I was going to bring you back to the DESE recommendations because our short-term steps weren't necessarily based on DESE's recommendations, but they're going parallel to them, so they're very validating. DESE recommended that and I'll talk as principals because that's what we're talking about here, but this can be generalized out. Take specific strategies, timelines, and clear expectations for the data district-wide. That was in our action plan anyways. So basically what we've been doing and we continue to develop is we have a clear data protocol that our teachers use when they look at the scientific data. They're trained in it. We call it the no shame, no blame, no excuses protocol. So they go through steps where they look at data just for the sheer numbers. They don't make any interpretations. They don't say, well, this happened in this family, or, the teacher's been out for, a time. It's just sheer number analysis, and it's very effective, and it stops that excuse happening that sometimes happens when you're looking at data. It stops the blame. Teachers say, well, this is what we got. This is where we're at. And it also gives us the ability to say, no more excuses. We just got to deal with it. We go on. And we make the determinations of what to do next. The timelines were very clear. Every instructional assistant, or every instructional leader has a calendar, and what's in yellow there is very hard to read, is basically every time throughout the year, they put into their calendar times where their teams are going to sit down and analyze data to inform instruction. It's in our timelines. They do it. It's on their calendar. It's also an expectation in their goals. All of their student learning goals, professional practice goals, and or their PLC goals have some component of an expectation of this data initiative and this learning how to read data, how to analyze data, how to inform practice of data, and also how it's going to increase student achievement, which goes back to the ultimate first goal. Now, the short-term recommendation was that that DESE recommended, but we had already done it inside of our plan. We're going to provide the ongoing targeted training and collection and analysis of student performance data. And this is just a couple of examples. We bring professional people in, like from NDWEA, to train our staff on the MAP testing and the information that teachers get from that. We do the PBIS training as well, same way, but that's with the positive behavior information for social and emotional. And those are just some dates of the trainings that have happened over the last 2 years and are coming up. And then we also provide embedded PD, teacher-to-teacher PD, which I talked a little bit about, but I just want to share one of the ones that we did most recently because it's a great next step. And we gave you a secondary packet. Poor Barbara said to me, it's not in the original one, but it was so small in the original one that I just wanted to give you a bigger one. So Barbara's going to, Mrs. Susko is going to pass it out for all of you. But basically, one of our technology instructional leader, Janice Campbell, sat down with each of our teacher teams and took what we call the learning continuum from MAP, and the teachers created documents, which you now have examples of. You don't have the full document because then we would be here forever. But what they do with this information is, again, MAP tells the teacher what that child is ready to learn at that moment in time. So they took their standards for their upcoming unit. So we did it at the beginning of the trimester. And so down the left-hand column, you will see all the standards that are identified in the curriculum that the teachers are supposed to be lesson planning for and unit planning for that trimester. So you won't have all the standards. But you will also then see across, what MAP does is it breaks apart those standards and makes them into progressive learning goals. So students need to know this and this in order to meet mastery of that larger standard. So if you look at the first page and just start on the left-hand side, that's a kindergarten example, and I believe it's math. I hope it's math. And you look across the bands, they call them red bands across the top. They're kind of in, I don't know, groupings, and we took the student names out of them for you, but it says student 1 is in this first band, the second column, and the student 2 and 3 are in this band. 4 through whatever, I can't read it from here, but are in the next band, so it moves that way. So MAP gives us that data, and we can put those kids into the bands. Then below it, it gives you the progression of the standard. So you see student 1 is for the standard number 1, is ready to learn counting to 100 by ones. But so is the student 15. They're ready to count to 100 by ones. And everybody in between is ready to count to 100 by ones. So what this tells the teacher, and what we're training teachers to understand, is that's a great whole class lesson, because all students need to learn that. They're all ready to learn that, and they're ready to go with that. And so as teachers are teaching that, and they're taking in their formative and summative data, they're able to say, okay, these kids got it now. We can move them now to the depth of the progression of the standard, which is to count to 100 by tens. So they can move on. Or we're going to intervene and remediate children who are not there yet. So that training is happening all the time. And I'll give you one other example. If you flip to page 4, because this tells you how we're using this information to differentiate. So I think I numbered them. This is a second grade example, and it's on reading as literature. So it's also set up the same way. The standard for the unit is down the left-hand column. The children are across the right-hand column. And again, this is real data. This is real-time data. And for standard 2-1, we got that one, you look across the thing and you see that in the 2 lower bands, the students are ready to infer the answer to a riddle, but nobody else beyond that is there. There's nothing written. That means only those children still are ready to learn that. All those other children have done that. They're able to infer for a riddle, so they're ready to go deeper in their learning. And then when you look down a little bit farther, you see kind of 1, 2, 3, and down to the bottom half of the page, it says describing characters, traits, or attributes, and that goes across 3 bands, but not across the first one and not in the second one. That means those middle bands are ready to be taught that. The first band, the child in the first band is not ready for that yet, but the people beyond those 3 bands are already mastered it. So this tells the teacher, hey, I can't teach this whole class. I've got to do this individually. It's got to be a small group instruction, and so they're planning their instruction that way. So that's the information that we're using and the progress we're making as far as this goal. Again, it's not only happening in language arts and math, it's happening with social, emotional, and specifically what I gave you examples here is tier 1 social, emotional next steps that we've been working on. And again, it lines up to DESE because DESE says that we should be using our data to inform instruction and also program evaluation. But we realized from our PBIS, it's not really a program, it's a system, but our children were taught, they're discreetly taught expectations. They have lessons on expectations of behaviors and ready to learn expectations. But what they didn't have is an understanding, and neither did the teachers, of logical consequence procedures. So we took that information, and children sat down with us, adults sat down with us, and we wrote lessons up and brainstorms what would be logical consequences for a level 1 incident or a level 2 incident. So we've been able to take this data and move forward on that. We also realized that our poor pre-K sometimes is an island out by themselves. And we realized that our SHARC expectations and those discrete lessons that we have been teaching on social emotional behaviors and ready to learn behaviors and expectations really wasn't targeting that important group. We needed targeting all of our learners. And so our preschool has taken the data and then been working to create lessons and expectations for what they're learning. Centers, ready to learn, those kind of things, being responsible in all their different environments. The other thing we realized, and it came directly from our children and the information they were giving us on some of our surveys, is a lot of children were saying, you're not seeing me. A lot of kids get a lot of attention for positive and negative stuff, but there's a lot of children that just do the right thing all the time, and they need to be seen. So we started a program called 3 for 3 Connections, which I had brought from my previous district. I had started it there as well, and basically every year our staff sits down and says, okay, who are the kids that are not our high flyers? They're not the ones that we're targeting in all those situations, but they still need to be seen. And basically what happens is this year we have 47 students that were identified. The children don't know they're identified, but they're assigned to a teacher who volunteers to talk to that student 3 times a week for 3 minutes each time. Seems simple? I know. It's 17 minutes of obligation by a teacher, and actually, I shouldn't just say teachers. It's all of our staff. Our custodians are doing it. Our instructional assistants are doing it. We have Sergeant Massey is doing it. We have our secretary is doing it, and basically, it's like for my guys. I walk down the hallway and say, "Hey, how was your weekend? What'd you do? Oh, I heard your baby brother is getting his first teeth." We just talk to children, and it's just a tier 1 support, and we put it in place. The last thing there too is a tag a SHARC, and that's a day-to-day thing that we include in our emails for our attendance. And that's, again, a basic thing that a teacher can say, or anybody can say, hey, guidance team or administrator, can you pick up Johnny, because Johnny just had a brand new brother and he wants to celebrate it with somebody. I just don't have enough time inside my classroom to say, way to go, or are you getting any sleep, that kind of thing. So it basically allows our teachers to send us a tag. They tag their SHARC inside their classroom and say, hey, we want to see, somebody needs to pick up Johnny and celebrate with him today. So we do that. So, of course, there's also the long-term next steps, and this is where I will be coming back to you in April. We have our draft of our next school-wide improvement plan. It never ends. But because of the progress that we have made this year, we have been able to, with the school council, really drill down very specifically on real trends in the data that we see. Our last plan was very global, we thought. This one is very student-focused and very learning-centered as far as that goes, and again, not just academically learning-centered. But it's out on the website. I'm happy to give you a copy of it, but it's addressing very specific achievement gaps that we have realized, including economically and non-economically disadvantaged gaps, and also some pretty significant gender gaps. So we're targeting those in the new draft of the plan. We're also targeting teaching and learning. We're carrying over one of our goals as far as differentiated instruction. I told you when I talked to you the first time I presented the plan that it would be messy. We wouldn't meet all of our goals. We're carrying over that, but with a much more specific goal intent of that focus area. And then we were able to limit our focus areas from 4 to 3. We're making progress. And the wellness goal is very specific to the work that Melissa McGuire is doing with her groups and what we need as a district as a whole, but supporting that at the building. And that one is one of my most exciting goals that we have going right now, because that's going to be measured in growth, not achievement. And to have a school council get to that point where they feel comfortable to say, yep, let's measure this for all kids in growth percentiles instead of just achievement, it's a nice way to go, and it's a nice way to look at the information for the longer term steps. So my reflection, I will not take long because, again, I've already taken too much of your time, but one of my favorite researchers out there is Dr. Fullen, and he does a lot on systems change. So after I sat down and I really kind of thought about all this, the quote that I put up there is really, he says it better than I, but basically, when we're looking at systems and we're looking to increase student outcomes in those systems, we ought to look at 4 key areas, and they call it coherence. If we have coherence in those 4 areas, then we can't help but get our students to the point where we want them to achieve. And we're all part of that. So I bring it to you, and you can take a look at it. It's also, the link is hot, so there's a hyperlink so that you can watch him explain this more. But what I put here is my reflections on things that I think we're doing well in that coherence model and what things that we have to work on. And, I think we're focused, we're driven, we have initial engagement. I think we could be working more on building collective purpose and continual engagement. It's hard to sustain these things. You want to move faster, and we want our data to be, so fast. We want things to change so fast. So to include that continual engagement, I know that's a frustration for my teams. They want to see the numbers change faster than they are, but we have to be understanding that this information, it takes time. And when you're building true systems of student achievement, it takes time. But we have to maintain that continual engagement. We have good clarified individual team roles based off all of the steps that we've taken, and great capacity building has been happening throughout this district. It's amazing how much professional development our teachers get, our staff gets, how much we're getting. It's wonderful. So, but we need also to work on our collaborative cultures and building that aspect of trust. Deepening learning, I talked about a little bit, making sure that we're accelerating improvement and fostering innovation. And I don't mean just technological innovation. There's brain research for learning is out there. We need to really be moving that forward and really kind of, I say, poking that bear, make sure our teachers understand what the brain learning is and shifting to those deeper practices of learning. And the last one, I think, is the one that at our level and Chatham that I really think I need to do a better job. This is a leadership reflection, but making sure that the accountability and the internal accountability is there. He calls it a moral imperative. I do too. It's a moral imperative that our students achieve. There's no reason why they don't. We have great teachers, we have great communities, we have great leaders, we have all of you supporting us. It's wonderful. We need to make sure that that internal accountability is built so that we're all in it together and understanding that. So that's my reflection.
All right then.
Okay.
Any questions for Dr. Millen? Ms. Richardson.
I think you've given new meaning to looking at DESI's issues and dealing with them. And to be able to identify needs and come up with a plan for whatever is huge. And to put it in boxes. No, anyway.
So thank you. I really do feel validated by DESI's report, because it gives that accountability again. It's external, but it gives us that other thing that just doesn't look like it's driven by us. It's all of us together.
And another thing that impresses me, it's so specific and individualized. I don't know, the bar has been raised as far as I'm concerned. And just one thing I was a little confused about was on this last slide you showed the internal ability. Could you just tell me a little bit more about that?
So in Fullen's model, he believes that for systems to really get the goals achieved that they really want, everybody has to have a collective purpose. So in our worlds, as far as teachers go and stuff, we feel a lot of external accountability. Like DESI says to us, we have to meet this level of proficiency. We need to do this, we have to do that, we have to do that. Administratively, we do that also. We approve goals, we have school-wide improvement goals, we have, teacher goals. All of those things are externally driven. But what Fullen will say is that if you only rely on that it's going to be empty. It doesn't sustain. And so a lot of initiatives will come and go, a lot of programs will come and go, people will take on new hot stuff. But if you don't set up that system of that moral imperative that we think every child can learn and will learn, then we don't have that internal capacity.
I see, and that is such another huge component. Anyway, I'm just blown away, and I look forward to hearing the April report.
Yes, hopefully the school council will be with me that night and keep me on. But yes, that school council that I've had over the last 3 years, they've been changing, but they've been amazing. Because they've taken all these interpretations that the teams are doing, I bring it to them, and they go through it and bring their own data. So right now, again, that school-wide improvement plan is out with the stakeholders. The parent teams have brought it out to the parent groups. I brought it to administrative teams. We have one person that's a community. He's brought it out to the community, and we're soliciting feedback on all that. So feel free to take a look at it, anybody out there, all of you, and send us anything that you think or see, because this is really for our community to drive the achievement.
And I just have to say, the student needs to be seen.
Oh, yes.
That is so rich. I just love that whole idea. And you do it without thinking about it, but to be able to document it.
And we track it.
In your piece.
Yeah. I don't believe putting anything in place that doesn't need to be fixed.
That isn't.
Because there's too many things that you then can do. But that was definitely a need. And our children brought that to us. Yeah, so.
They do. That's great. Thank you.
Mr. Russell?
Great job, Robin. I've been around the business a lot of years, and I am so impressed with, I know this is a very quick overview, but I am so impressed with, first of all, your passion, and that's contagious. Fulham's final 4 years to me, and powerful things happen. And that's why people do what they do here as classroom teachers, to wait out that 2 or 3 or 4 years so they see that power. Sometimes it's high school graduation. Miss Barr as an extreme example when she was here. So what a I think of, and I don't have one, but a GPS or roadmap to success. These 5 or 6 pages, and I know you have to absorb it, and teachers have to have 2 or 3 years to finally get a feel that they're coming to the plate with practice, because that's another thing the kids need, and we need to practice it. So I commend you and your staff that this certainly is a guideline that we all can at some point reflect back on, and it's something that probably for years and years and years I never saw this kind of dribs and drabs of it. But the end result is that when it's time for a teacher to have a summative review and say, good job, because this built into the goals. And as principal, you seem to be in the thick of it. So continue the good job.
Share it with the staff, though. They care a lot, so it's a very good thing for them to hear that you, like I said about the internal accountability, your support for them will mean a lot to build that, because we are all part of this. It's a system that the system is affected by each one of our actions. So I'll share it.
Ms. Long?
I just wanted to take the opportunity to tell you that this analysis is remarkable. On behalf of you and your team and the teachers and everybody at the elementary school, it was very interesting to listen to. You really drilled down to the individual student, which I appreciated, and also looked at it from a wider scope, and then you really focused on diversifying between math and between language and emotional and social and learning and how everyone's working so cohesively well. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the presentation because I never could have done this.
We do.
You have a lot of passion for what you do, and I admire that. And I have to point out that I love the 3-to-3 connections. I think that was like the sweetest part of the presentation at the end.
It's such a simple thing. It doesn't cost any money.
It is. It's the simplest thing, but sometimes it's the most important thing with what's going on right now. It really just struck a chord with me. And the student check-in needed, just the simple things sometimes at the end of the day. But attention to detail, the report, utilizing the DESE information, just incredible job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Dowd?
So I have a quick question and then a couple comments. The quick question is, you put the SEL in here, and is that for next year? Are there dates above all around?
The PBIS information?
No, the wellness. Long-term next steps, DESE recommendations, and in here in the center, you've got the focus area wellness by year 3, So I'm a little
Sure.
confused.
So that's the draft of our new school-wide improvement plan. So we have a wellness goal currently with
Yes.
other goals, and I will share that, our progress on those goals. And we've mastered, well, in most situations, a current goal. That's our next goal. And again, that's a coordinated goal between all the information that's coming both district-wide, but also from our own personal data, because this is a school-wide improvement goal, it's not a district, but we support the district's goal. So that by year 3 is that all of our teachers, the one goal is that all of our teachers, all of our classrooms, not even teachers, all of our classrooms will integrate one aspect of the 5 social emotional frameworks. And that's not that we'll have a discrete lesson necessarily every week, but it will either be embedded authentically in some other social studies, reading, math lesson, or there'll be a discrete lesson on social emotional. We also currently do like a social emotional book of the trimester, so what we have a common read. So it could be that type of thing where all of our students, we just did only one U, and all of our students and all of our teachers and everybody, including math, arts, everybody is talking the same social emotional language. So it's a combination of the Castle recommendations. I know you're on that committee, so that's from that.
Okay. So one of the things I really like is I get more for it than I ask for,
Ah.
and I like that.
I'm sure you'll all feel that
I
way.
didn't know I was asking all that.
Scott asked for it.
The two comments are, when you're talking about the buy-in and passion and whatever you said was your moral imperative. When I looked at this thing that you developed and you mentioned Janice Campbell's name, I think that this, what the kids are ready for, that you all developed, that is where the teacher's moral imperative is. That's where they get
Right.
so, it's
Right.
exciting to have this and not just what happens in these tests.
Right. So like Mr. Russell, I've been doing this a long
Yes.
time, and we've known that children are ready to learn at certain things through a myriad of information. It's not just one data point, but allowing us to have the NWA MAP assessments is really kind of giving that concrete evidence of that.
Yes.
And it's taken some of that guesswork out of it. You know, again, some of the data we throw out because it just doesn't match what we're getting someplace else, and we have all that analysis built into this, so it's not a tried and true thing. However, it also gives us a launching point to say, okay, I taught this today, and typically if I introduce this 3 or 4 times, 65% of my children get that. If they don't, then they can say, what am I doing in my teaching that children didn't get it? And if only, and the 35% need more of it in this way. So they're progress monitoring that own instruction that way, and it's giving them, they came up with that. That was not me. They came up with that organization. And it's been wonderful. But it's taken time to learn. And
Yes.
yeah, so.
But I think the best things are the things that people come up with themselves.
Oh, I agree.
That the other thing is, like everyone else, that 3-on-3, you know, it's, you alluded to that, you know, we had our first
I know.
person speaking this morning.
I didn't plan.
We need to have the kids feel a part of things. The whole Monomoy system's doing various things, but to have 3 minutes, I mean, the research shows that I'm not sure every kid gets 3 minutes of parent involvement. It might be.
Well, and
but-
a lot of our 3-on-3s have had children for multiple years, so they grow a rapport without the child knowing that here you're getting this, you know. And again, it's
so
you know,
important.
it's all kids and kids that need.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I want to echo everybody else's comments because this was just impressive. It was very thorough and enjoyable, and your passion just exudes. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing your update at the
Now
plan.
you can talk social emotion.
All right, so we will move on our reports and discussions to the District Wellness Committee update with Mrs. McGuire.
Good evening, Melissa McGuire, Director of Student Services. I'm hoping you'll bear with me because I do want to just dovetail a little bit of some of the information that Robin gave and expand a little bit more on certainly our heightened sense of urgency and what's recently happened in Florida. I will be doing an SEL report, I believe, next month, but did want to share just some things that we are doing because we are so committed to our mental wellness and our mental health for our students in the district, and we've established a really nice social emotional learning committee. We have been participating in a grant with 8 other districts in the state that we were chosen to participate with the Excel team, which is the Excellence Through Social Emotional Learning, which is a 3-year project that is really helping us to develop a really nice integration plan of taking all of those pieces that are critical to us and priorities to us for our students and putting a plan of action in place. We also have a grant from the Safe and Supportive Schools, and we're partnering with them to really look at our school climate and our school culture. And with that, we've been invited to also partner with not just DESE, but what we're really excited about. I haven't told the superintendent this yet, but I'm telling you now. So we will be presenting at the statewide Safe and Supportive School Conference in a couple of weeks, but we were asked if we could partner with the Department of Research and the data person that does all the data design for school culture, climate, social emotional learning. She'll be presenting with us, but she is looking forward to coming to the district and really working with us to create really some nice research and data for the social emotional learning programs and supports that we've put in place. So that's really exciting. I'm sorry I'm throwing it out there now, but I just want to be able to, share with folks that we are really looking at what are some of the root causes. And when an incident happens, especially to the magnitude that was seen in Florida, of course, it heightens our concerns and our emotional responding. We have an amazing crisis team that has come together. We've been communicating with frequently, which involves the police and the fire and nurses and psychologists and teachers and administrators. So, we're really working tightly with that group. We have an amazing clinical team at all the schools who are really very much on top of who our kids are, what their needs are, and making sure they're advocating for those needs. So I really wanted to, in addition to all the other things we'll talk about when I do the report, but I do want to share for the community that we understand the urgency as well, and are really putting into place what we feel is an incredibly powerful network and supports and services for our students. So with that, I'm going to present the wellness report. So this is the second report this year from the District Wellness Committee. So I'm pleased to share our updates with our committee. So first, of course, just for the community to know that there is a regulation that requires all school districts to have a district-wide wellness committee. We have an amazing committee. As you can see, it is made up of quite a few members of the district, of the community. We have several students that are on the committee who have had wonderful voice to developing our goals. And we have a few new parent members this year too. So I'm quite blessed with the amount of folks who have really joined our team and helped us to develop our goals. So last year we established the committee, and then we made some recommendations for the wellness policy, which was approved last June. And this year we've developed goals. We've met 3 times, and we have made progress towards the goals, which I'm going to share with you. So this is just our meeting dates. Our last meeting will be in April. We just met on February 8th, and we reviewed an assessment tool, and we discussed progress towards goals. One of the requirements for a district wellness committee is that you have an assessment tool that looks at how are you implementing the wellness policy and how are you making progress towards the goals that you've developed. So we have reviewed an assessment tool. So our first goal area, it was school meals. And that was looking at making sure that children were making selections. Out of 5 selections, that they were choosing at least 3 out of 5 days weekly. Well, having just put this goal in place, we've already met it 100%. So I think we will probably at our next meeting look at what else might we want to do in relationship to our school meals. And what our Director of Food Services was able to provide us is really, this is more a breakdown of how many students are participating in the breakfast program and how many students are participating in the lunch program. And of all of those numbers, 100% of those students are selecting 3 out of the 5 selections, and actually 5 days a week. So I think we have an opportunity here for some growth in looking at our students and nutrition. In the second part of that was that we would offer a federally funded after-school snack program. The process for that is that the application process happens in 1 year, which has been completed and submitted, and then the actual program and the funding for that happens in the following year. So that the program will actually start with the food being able to be distributed in the fall. Our next goal is nutrition education and promotion. In providing teachers with resources, every student will receive minimally 1 lesson on healthy nutrition in every classroom at least once per year. What the committee decided is that first we needed to find out what were we doing and how were the teachers feeling about this. And pleasantly, when we sent out the survey to the teachers, as you can see on the graph, we have almost 50% of the teachers are actually already doing this. So this was a pleasant surprise to get this feedback. So now what we'll be looking at is of those who aren't necessarily providing 1 lesson on nutrition, is providing them actually with the resources and support to integrate a healthy nutrition lesson in their curriculum. The other part of the survey was asking the teachers in terms of what were they doing, and here are a few examples. In your report, I think there are more examples, but looking at stopping the spreading of germs, looking at healthy choices and the importance of exercise and hygiene, nutrition projects, lessons on the human body system and diet and exercise, lessons on increasing your heart rate, and in Spanish, talking about keeping active and eating a healthy diet. So those are some examples of what's already in place. So it was kind of exciting going into this, thinking, okay, this is a goal we're really going to be working to support teachers, but the teachers are already engaged in this. Looking at providing the teachers with the resources to do the lesson once per year, what we asked is if they were willing, in fact, to do that. So we really only had a very, very small percentage of folks that said no. Now, what's interesting about that no, they were already the health and physical teachers who are already doing it. So I didn't preface, if you are already teaching it, you don't have to answer the question. So it kind of came out a little skewed on the data, and in the comments it says, I'm already doing it. No, I'm not gonna. So anyway, so it's a little skewed, but so it is really refreshing to see the numbers that said yes, and the maybes, you know what, that's just a work that we have to do, and I think it's more about us supporting and providing the resource of how it can be integrated, because we don't want it to be that one more thing. We want it to be something that they're passionate about and they're easily able to integrate it into their lessons. The other goal area is integrating physical activity into the classroom setting. This is another goal. I was so pleased to see the data come back in terms of asking teachers if they are providing opportunities for physical activity, and 72% already integrate physical activity on a daily basis into their classroom routine. So I was very, very excited about those data. And the 27%, and it's one of the things we looked at in our goals, and one of the things that the students had quite a voice about, is at the high school level. First of all, their first comment was, do you understand how much activity we get already going back and forth 2 classes alone? Never mind some of the other activities that they're engaged in through JOSM, their sports, their after-school clubs. So the high school students were very vocal in saying, we do not have 1 more minute to do another thing that's especially, that's a physical activity. So a lot of that a lot of those data are from the high school teachers. Looking at some of the activities, though, some of the examples of what is happening at the elementary and middle school level, stretching and walking around the classroom, taking walks in the hallway. There's one classroom that's doing yoga, stretching twice a day. They're doing movement breaks, outdoor activities. Goat Noodle, which is an online interactive movement activity with mindfulness activities. There are actually quite a few that responded that are using Go Noodle, so that was exciting. Meditation activities using the Echo Dot, which I'm pleased to say, again, we have 68 out in classrooms, and I've observed several classrooms and the activities they're doing. But the Echo Dot also, not just the mindfulness, but it does have exercise activities that the kids can use the Echo Dot for as well. And then, of course, communication with parents. The goal was for the food service department to provide a quarterly newsletter. I did provide it in your packet. I'm going to hope the link works, so just the community can just get a sense. It is on our website. It's called Nibbles. It is quite a cute name. What I really liked about it, it's not just about, oops, I'm trying to scroll here. All right, well, anyways, it's on the website, but what I really liked about it, it gave some nice recommendations for parents, what they can also do with their children in terms of sitting down to a meal and the types of choices that are being made. So I really like that there's both, what happens at school and recommendations for parents in terms of healthy choices. So it's a nice newsletter. And the next one, I believe, goes out in April. Okay, and just moving forward, really being able to continue to communicate with staff and provide support in the related to the wellness policy and our wellness initiatives. Continue to communicate with the community, continue to monitor our progress with our goals and actually kind of look at our goals and see if we can up the ante a little bit, and then celebrate the successes in our district as it relates to our wellness. And I thank you, and if you have questions.
Any questions for Ms. McGuire?
I don't want to be a letdown after Robin, so.
Well, yours was much shorter. No offense, Robin.
No questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll be coming back shortly anyway. Oh, no, next week. All right, next on our agenda is the FY 2018 July through January financial report and budget transfer requests. Ms. Isernio.
Katie Isernio, business manager. In your packet, as Ms. Scott mentioned, we have the financials and we're right on track. I do the narrative on the quarterly basis, so this is just the in-between period of time. We are, we have encumbered and year-to-date expenditure with a balance of just over $1 million or 2.8% of the budget at this point. We're right on track where we were at this time last year. And so there aren't any surprises or things that aren't what we had intended. And what you'll see that the budget transfers that we're requesting today are areas that when we just made the changes in the FY19 budget were areas that we were able to reduce in some of the utility lines, etc. So they tie in nicely with the FY19 budget. I don't know if anyone has any questions. The revenues were included as well, and given that the majority of the revenues we receive are Chapter 70 monies and the assessments from our two towns, we're right on track with those as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Would you like to work on those budget transfers now?
Sure.
Anybody? In your packets, there is a budget transfer list.
Wait, hold on.
Somebody would like to make a motion to transfer from all of those lovely numbers into?
Yes. Yeah.
Ms. Long's working on it.
I got it. I had
Ready?
to sneeze, I thought, but I guess I didn't.
Bless you.
Sorry.
Ms. Long.
Yes. I move to transfer from account number 1,000.01.422.0.600.800.005.160.5. Maintenance of building, other expense, $10,000. Transfer to 1,000.300.911.970.658.005.1780 school choice tuition. 159,105. Keep going.
We can probably shorten all of those numbers and just read those last four digits.
Thank you.
And so if maybe you could read just the last four digits of each from account with the amounts.
And then end with the two?
And then end with the two last four with the total amount.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So would you like to maybe, you can start over if you want.
I move to transfer from, we're going to start over, account ending in 1605, maintenance of building of other expense, $10,000. Account ending in 1576, heating, $10,000. Account ending in 1586, utilities, electricity, $11,000. Account ending in 1586, utilities, water, $7,105. Account ending in 1605, maintenance of building other expense, $19,000. Account ending in 1576, heating, $20,000. Account ending in 1604, maintenance of building contract service, $50,000. Account ending in 1586, utilities, water, $7,000. Account ending in 1604, building maintenance contract service, $10,000. Account ending in 1656, technology other expense, $15,000, for a total of $159,105 to account ending in 1780, school choice tuition.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Long.
Sorry, I messed that up.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda is the regional agreement. So, at the Chatham Board of Selectmen, if those are not aware, gosh, 2 weeks ago?
Feels like just yesterday.
It feels like a month ago. 2 weeks ago, the Chatham Board of Selectmen did not vote in favor of our changes. Therefore, because they did not vote in favor of our changes, it had to come back to us, because it has to be approved by everyone before it can go to town meeting. So we have a decision to make as a committee as to what we would like to do with said regional agreement. Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Russell.
My recommendation would be to recall our changing of that page 4 amendment, revisiting the original agreement as stated, and move on with our school administration observing for the next 2 or 3 years the Chatham issue regarding children's ups, numbers down. I really can't fault any of us for the last year of identifying this as a need. Kind of reminds me historically of the ride of Paul Revere. It's not as if when he set out for Concord and Lexington that everyone said, oh, thanks, I'll get ready. So it's going to take several more months and years of looking at this, and hopefully it all balances out and the British aren't coming. So in that case, we've, I think, thrown out that vision that it clearly is a potential for an adjustment and a need, and I don't think we need to confirm ourselves what the arguments were regarding what might happen in a negative way at Chatham Elementary as their numbers get smaller and smaller, and our Howard Elementary remained the same or grew. So that's, I think, now for another education year, 2 or 3 years down the line. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Duvall.
my feeling is that because it's a 2-year process, that we need to come forward and say that if we make a change, it has to be approved at town meeting, not just by the school committee and the board of selectmen. We put it in front of the town and they can say yes or no. But because if it's voted at yes at both town meetings, it has to go to the state for approval, and then it's a year after that it goes into effect. So if we know this is coming down the pipe, and we know that there's going to have to be some sort of change, that's gonna have to happen. And if we at least have the mechanism in place to suggest the change or bring the change forward to both town meetings, we're a step ahead of the game. If we wait 3 years before we do something, then it's 5 years before something actually happens, which I think is too big a gamble.
Mr. Carpenter?
I don't disagree with Steve, for once, no. But I think that, I think from Chatham, the vibe I get is the support for the changes the committee wants isn't there for from the select board, so I worry about whether we can get it for town meeting. I think it would behoove us to move forward with this year to change the agreement, sans the section on elementary schools, so that what we have is a cleaned up agreement that has all of the, all these lines that need to kind of come out that for stuff that doesn't matter anymore because it dealt with regionalization, so that down the road, 2 years, 3 years, or whenever we have to address it, there's a pretty clean document that only has a paragraph that we have to argue and can focus on, and not this document that has lined out sections here, there, and all over, and then I think gets a little too confusing as to where is the pertinent section.
Ms. Stout?
I agree with what Scott's saying, I think, and also what Terry's saying. I think that we heard very clearly what the Chatham selectmen had to say. Chatham is definitely not for this at this point. I do agree that getting all of this language and something clean together is needed anyway. So I would say that's the direction I would want to go in.
Ms. Long?
I kind of echo what Steve said, in that I think that we've put a lot of work and time and effort and thought into the regional agreement and the drafting of the current regional agreement. And although the proposal didn't go as we would have liked and as we had, voted in front of the Board of Selectmen, I still think that we should move forward because of the length of time that it takes to process the regional agreement. I don't think at this point would hinder, the process itself wouldn't hinder us putting it forth to the town of Chatham to vote. And therefore, I believe it would have to go for the town of Harwich to vote as well. I feel like the selectmen's comment, having attended the meeting, wasn't so much that they necessarily all disagreed with it, but that they didn't hear a lot of arguments to change it, because the few that did attend were against it. But it's frustrating because being at these meetings and attending and listening to all of the reasons that do make sense for maybe someday having to make some type of change, which is yet to be identified, which a lot of people are presuming what they think will happen, but no decisions have been made. I think that that body doesn't speak for everyone in the community, and that it's our job to maybe put together some more formal presentations on and education on the reasons why we are thinking about doing this, and really focusing on that vote isn't necessarily to make a change. It's just to allow the flexibility in the event down the line, so that we don't have to, in an emergent situation, as I would call it, when all of a sudden you have to shift all the schools around, take 2 years to change a regional agreement. We've already put a year into this regional agreement. We should just take it to the town of Chatham. If that's what they've asked, then I think that's what we should do.
Thank you. Other comments, Mr. Crafty?
If we take it to town meeting and it fails, it's going to be harder to get it there again, because people are going to be able to say, well, it already failed, we don't want it, no one wants it. And the kids are going to suffer. That's what gets me. I don't know a solution at all. I agree with Terry, maybe we wait 2 years, see what, more evidence, but right now, I mean, I don't know, there's not much support for it. Because people don't know what they're even talking about, really, to be bluntly.
Ms. Richardson, I'll come back and see if everybody gets a chance first.
This just occurred to me, in looking ahead, suppose it did go to town meeting, if that's what happens, and Howard says one thing and Chatham says the opposite, how does that work?
It doesn't pass. I don't know the actual next step. If it would have to come back to us, and then it would have to go back to town meeting, I don't know for sure.
Right.
And regardless, both towns have to approve it for changes to be made.
Right. The reason I was thinking of that is when Howard maybe gets wind of what it's going to cost them to keep Chatham in a small school, I don't think there'll be an agreement. Just saying.
Mr. Russell?
A lot of good thoughts here, and I refer back to my initial thought. I think we gave it a very good go for the last 10 months, discovering it, turning it around, seeing the logic. Sometimes in your own lives, you see a lot of heat and there's no light. We're getting a lot of heat, and we have not created the light enough. So I disagree, Steve. I don't think we should move towards any town meeting vote to clarify that. I say page 4, whatever the document. I do think clearing up all sarands regarding the formation of it, I think is very appropriate. But I would give it the next year or two to create a little bit more light around the issue, without any changes, and keep track with regular meetings with both finance and boards of selectmen and all those who would be concerned regarding the issue. And if the issue quietly on its own settles in through some, which I don't totally agree with, marketing device that causes Howard youngsters to add 2 or 3 or 4 children per grade, K4 over in Chatham, so be it. That's no harm, no loss at all. On the other hand, for the long term, I think even though it might be 2 or 3 years, I think we still, as a committee, would have enough time to bring some concrete numbers and then move towards another round 2 that may in fact be received better, and then move towards each town meeting with that, rather than continue, because I don't think we really want to create more heat around, most especially when I too attended and made a desperate attempt at the debonair, making some comments the other night at the Chatham meeting. But I think that our attempt to bring some transparency to a what-if boomerang to some extent, when several of the speakers of the 6 that disagreed, at least 2 or 3, zeroed in on creating some future upper and lower elementary configuration, which probably could be a good thought educationally, but frankly, I've often thought this solution, at the minimum, would require some basic, simple redistricting of 2, 3, 4 streets in some area, probably East Howard, the closest to Chatham Elementary. That would take care of it in a very simple way. But I don't see it would serve anyone's purpose this spring or next year to bring it to both town meetings to, again, re-educate, unless we get some further data. So that's where I sit on the issue.
Mr. DeValle?
My sense from the selectmen is they voted no because they didn't feel the townspeople had enough of a voice. They voted no on the school committee and the selectmen making the choice. They wanted the town meetings to do it. And my point is, 3 years from now, the change to the regional agreement is going to be that it has to be approved at the town meeting. So why not put it forward right now that to make any change, it has to be approved by town meetings? And then, for the next 3 years, do the educational process so that when the change comes before the town meetings, all the parents are well educated and they can make that choice. But the mechanism is there to do that. And so 3 years from now, we're not changing the regional agreement to say town meeting has to approve it, and then have that go to the DESC, and they have 10 months to approve that, and then it goes into effect the following September. I mean, I just, that was my sense.
Ms. Long?
Madam Chair, would you mind reading the section, I see you have the regional agreement right in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
The section that we have changed, and if we worded it the way the Board of Selectmen asked it to be worded, which I think is what Steve is suggesting, can you do that off the cuff?
Off the cuff?
Well,
No, but
yeah,
I could
within.
read it. I could read it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have it memorized yet.
Okay.
So the section would read, "There shall be no less than one elementary school in each town, except in special cases as defined by the regional district school committee. Students in elementary grades shall attend schools in their towns of residence unless the school committee votes to assign students on a basis other than town of residence, and each town meeting by majority vote approves the school committee's vote." Would you like me to do that again, hopefully
That's
in
what
one?
they wanted.
That's what the selectmen were looking for.
Correct. And that's what you're proposing.
Yes.
We bring, because that's what they're asking, and clearly, they don't want it the other way. And it's gonna have to go that way eventually, because something's gonna have to change, maybe. With all of the information I've been hearing, something's gonna have to change. Maybe not. Maybe we'll have a huge influx of people move into Chatham, and a huge influx of people move out of Harwich. You never know. I agree with Steve, and you've done a nice job reading what hypothetically it might say. I just say, we're just gonna create, with all due respect, we're just gonna have heat, whether we do it now or whether we do it in 3 years. There's always gonna be a contention about a decisions that's being made when you're talking about regionalization, redistricting, upper, lower, whatever the solution may be. So, and you're doing exactly what the town Board of Selectmen are asking. You're giving the choice to the community. And if that's what they'd like, then as a member of the town of Chatham, I had to wear 2 hats in this, you know? As a school committee member, knowing what the superintendent was reporting, seeing what the numbers show, projecting out what's gonna be the best benefit for the students of Harwich and Chatham. And then as a town taxpayer, you know, would I like to see Chatham stays its perfect little, you know, why do I have to fix, if Harwich is having the problem, why does my school have to change kind of attitude, which is kind of what I was sensing from other parents. But it's a bigger issue than that. And I had to put my other hat on and say, you know, it is a bigger issue than that. We're a district now. We're a regional district, and we have to act that way. And we agreed that this is what we're doing, and this comes with it. So I'm sure there's an amicable way we can figure it out, but long story short is I really think that we should make the revision to have the towns vote on this and move forward for May.
Ms. Stout?
I agree with the point that you made about that we'd have the heat either way. However, I'd rather have it once than twice. And there's a lot of, from the students and from the parents, I think there's a lot of support because they've experienced Monomoy. But from the taxpayers and people that really are not close to Monomoy, that is what we saw in Chatham for, you know, some problems. And I do think we'd see some of that in Harwich. Harwich, the selectmen only voted 3-2, and my guess is that would be kind of how the town went. But we're turning up all kinds of feelings about, I've already heard what are they trying to do, all this kind of stuff. And why do it now? Because we're not asking to do anything. So in the future, if there's more to show them of reason why we're doing that, that's one thing. But for a year or two, I don't think it makes sense.
Mr. Russell?
In hindsight, Florence Sullivan the other night made a comment, and considering the temper of the climate, I fully agree with her, that in fact leave it alone. Leave it alone until the education in the next year, or plus, continues to allow people in the know, regardless whether it's town meeting or the selectmen, regarding the issue. Donna commented, and I don't have the answer either. And before I would vote to have the town meeting vote, I'd like to see where that heads. What happens when the town of Howard votes no and the town of Chatham votes yes on any issues? I don't know. Maybe we can find out the next year. Where does that all head? Long before we make a change. So I think I agree with Sharon. I think let well enough alone. We had an attempt at making certain that we were clarified, and I don't think it went over, although I do say that 3 out of the 2 Howard selectmen said, go for it. We seem some sense in the selectmen making a choice with the school committee. I tend to agree with that. In the future, would all town meetings have to approve major changes? Maybe yes. But I don't see the point of changing that now. We'll allow it to remain as is, and we'll revisit this during the course of the next year or two.
So, anybody else?
It just sounds like Mr. Russell's excited for another 3 years.
I have so many different opinions going on in my head, because I think that as a school committee, we're doing our due diligence and looking forward. And I think we did the right thing, and we're doing the right thing by saying, looking at the data, looking at what the numbers that Mr. Carpenter is bringing us, and looking at the numbers that are in the schools, and looking at there could be a potential problem. And if there's a potential problem, we need to look to see what we can do to fix the potential problem. Right now, there's not a problem. It is what it is. And I think, unfortunately, many people aren't having these conversations like we've had, and they're not listening to the same presentations that we're listening to. And therefore, all they see is, you want to make a change. And there's no reason to make a change. And we don't want to change. And I think people are getting very passionate about the fact that this is what we were promised, this is what we need, leave it alone. Don't change anything. And we're saying the same thing. Right now, nothing needs to be changed. And in 2 or 3 years, something may need to be changed, and we need to be able to have that avenue to do it. And so I think we've done our jobs and our due diligence in presenting the potential problem to the towns and to the parents. I also see the concern with, right now, there's basically 2 separate things happening. We have a regional agreement that needs to be more or less cleaned up with some specific changes just based on no longer needing interim school committee information, and also some the payment information, the dates that are actually happening. And that stuff needs to be changed, and I'm afraid that that's going to get overshadowed by an update to the elementary school portion right now. And in my mind, if there is a potential situation that comes up in September, October, more than likely there's going to be a special town meeting in the fall, or we could request a special town meeting in the fall. If we move to, so, sorry, my brain's moving a lot faster than my words. If we leave the elementary school section alone and the regional agreement gets updated through town meeting and it is passed, and then all of a sudden we say, in September, there's a issue, there's a situation that's evident right then, right there, we could go back at that town meeting, or we could go to next spring's town meeting and make a potential change there. So while I completely agree with Mr. Duvall and the timelines required to update the regional agreement, so the best of my knowledge, once a regional agreement is approved by everybody that it needs to be approved by, including town meetings, we have until the end of the calendar year, December 31st, to submit it to DESE for their approval, and they will approve it to be in force starting July 1st the following year. So if everything falls into place and everything gets changed and corrected and approved at town meetings, this regional agreement won't be in force until July 1st, 2019. So that's the timeline of the regional agreement. So I have a leaning towards, I think we should just leave the elementary school portion alone, kind of let the public catch up with us in what we are starting to see, and allow the changes that need to be made, have that go through as is, and then when we start to see a actual situation coming next year, we come back and say, look, these are the hard numbers. This has happened for 2 years now, 3 years now, whatever it is. We need to make a change. Right now, we're looking at the potential, the hypothetical, the future, and I don't think everybody else has caught up with us. So that's my 10,000 cents. Mr. Carpenter.
You know, I think if we're looking out into the future, I think 3 years from now, we would be positioned to, I think, have people in Chatham have a better feel for the challenges that we see kind of looming out there. I mean, at the moment, we have kindergarten with now one empty classroom where there used to be 3 sections. And if we go 3 years out, we're going to be looking at more than likely, you know, an empty classroom, you know, an empty first grade classroom, a second grade classroom, and a third grade classroom. I think then the committee would be positioned that if we had to take something forward or relook at the agreement in 3 years, it still gives us that time that, you know, even if we have to wait a year for, you know, for DESE, you know, so we now have empty classrooms in 4th grade too. But if we have to go the route of, if the committee and if the numbers look like the route of redistricting makes sense, it's actually a good point to do that, because you're redistricting all grade levels at once, rather than having to go into a neighborhood and say, okay, we just need the first, second, third graders to come this way. So I think, you know, I think if we can clean the wording, and I think we're going to probably need to be, you know, thinking about when that current kindergarten class is up in grade 3, and Chatham Elementary School is going to look a lot smaller. I know it came up at the selectmen's meeting. Well, if we just marketed more, you know, we're going to market and be able to balance the class sizes between Harwich and Chatham, and that's the strategy that we're trying to have, is to keep those class sizes the same. I doubt that marketing is going to bring, you know, another 18 kids from Harwich to Chatham Elementary School to prop it up to have 3 sections at each grade level, and we're not seeing, you know, I keep getting these, you know, these reports. Well, you know, there's a bumper crop of kids in the preschools. You know, we're not seeing the numbers there to, you know, see the, you know, Chatham Elementary swell to another 3 sections of kindergarten, at least for the births that are currently out there that we know. You know, so I think, you know, I think there is a window looming out there, and I think the community will have a much better feel for some of the dynamics that are playing out that we can all see.
Ms. Long.
And you might not be able to answer this right now, and that's fine, but what's the kind of, the current projection or threshold for how low Chatham can go with number of students before it's too difficult to balance or for it to function? And then also, where are we at with Harwich Elementary, to the point where I know that we're running out of physical classrooms, And, we can keep bringing teachers, if we drop to one first grade teacher, does that mean we bring a first grade teacher over to Harwich, but where do they go because we have no classrooms for first grade?
Well, I think.
Just logistically, where are we?
I think we may have to look at Harwich Elementary School and decide, make some decisions. I think prior to me coming here, I think there's a classroom that's large enough to be a regular classroom that we're using for some sort of specials, and do we do specials differently there to have a sixth classroom? And I think we should also keep in mind that, that Harwich, it's not like Harwich is having this booming population. It's been pretty steady, and we've been able to take in some school choice students. We don't take in many, and most of them have been siblings, but if we we try to keep that number as close to that, that 18 threshold, and actually use taking students in through school choice at Harwich to somewhat balance, to make sure that we're seeing equivalent class sizes between Harwich and Chatham. So we use school choice to help balance, our numbers, but again. 3 years, and the population shifts that are happening with the younger kids. A lot could change in both communities. One of the things when I went through this effort working with both town clerks on like the births in both towns from the end of this last year, and just kind of plotting births in both towns versus number of kids that show up in kindergarten, and there's basically no rhyme or reason to the number of births and how many kids show up in kindergarten. It was not a very predictive number to go with, and I think it speaks to some of the transient nature of our two communities, particularly when it comes to younger families, that they're kind of moving in and out, or potentially doubling up with the parent or some houses. So we'll just have to see as we go.
So we've got some creative ways to move some rooms around physically, and then we've got school choice that we can still help manipulate what we need to.
Right.
And that'll help balance student-teacher ratio, which I know is a huge issue.
Yeah, I think for me, where I think it becomes challenging is if we see the number in Chatham dip down and the number in Harwich stay high without adding school choice, and then it's like, okay, how do I balance and create educational equity between the classrooms in two towns when there's no mechanism to move kids? And we're not there yet. There's, so we have pretty similar class sizes between the two schools, and it's, again, there's two issues at play. There's class size, and then there's just number of classrooms in an elementary school. And while we heard from some at the Chatham Selectmen's meeting that it was okay if Chatham Elementary School goes down to 2 classrooms or 1 classroom per grade level, I'm just speaking from my own vantage point as a parent that moved here with 2 kids. When my daughter went into Chatham Elementary School when it was 3 sections and 14 students in each class, and my son was at the middle school where the middle school classrooms were really small. I mean, there were not enough peers for him, and I worry that you can have a cohort within a school get so small that it's not great for the kids too. And I appreciate the people that spoke at the selectmen's meeting on that want to have that small town school. I think that's I get it, I understand it, and I also know that from a kid's perspective, and I thought Selectman Dykens did a nice job of articulating that sometimes that smallness isn't great for kids.
Thank you.
Ms. Stowe?
In Harwich, I know that we used to take a lot of school choice kids, and we'd bump it up so that when they went to the middle school, there'd be enough. So by not doing that, I don't think we're going to have an overcrowding in Harwich. And in Chatham, we've always taken school choice, or for many, many years, and it's not just been from Harwich. So that's another way to level those class sizes out, is to open it up to other towns. When I worked there, we had people coming from Sandwich and further away to school choice.
It is open to other towns.
But it sounds like all of the grades are. So we'll never have a class of 14 if we're opening it up to 16 or 18 or something for school choice.
Right, well, the school choice is open to, we'll take students from other towns. It's just, the reason most have come from Harwich is that Chatham just geographically is wrapped by Harwich and the sea. So that's why I think there's traditionally been more kids coming from Harwich.
Right,
But we do have kids from outside of Harwich too.
And do we accept that in all of the grades in Chatham?
Yeah.
Okay. And do we only accept them in just the first day of school, or do we accept them at another time in the school year?
We try in this district over the last couple of years to focus on accepting students before the start of the school year so that they're with us for the whole year.
Mr. Duvall?
Recall the first night we had this debate about A, B, or C and what to put in. I spoke to the need to put in, much like we have for budgets, that if one town meeting says no and the other town meeting says yes, that there be a joint town meeting, and that decides which, decides whether the budget's approved or not. And that is a mechanism that is already in the document. So it could be applied to that section as well.
Could be.
Food for thought.
Creative thinking, Mr. Duvall.
Does anybody have any other comments, or would somebody care to make some sort of motion on something to do? I would, but I can't.
I'll move, if someone wants to help, that the regional agreement speaking to the organizational changes be submitted. For approval of the two town meetings. That's all. I guess what I'm saying is that the elementary school issue, I would recommend we leave it alone as it speaks regarding two elementary schools in the regional agreement as it exists. So without getting in a lot of details, I would.
So can I clarify your motion?
Certainly you may.
And you can tell me whether or not I'm reading your motion correctly. So you're saying that all of the other changes to the regional agreement leave and revert the elementary school configuration back to what it was in the original regional agreement?
Correct. Why couldn't I say that?
Because you didn't have it in front of you. Just for clarification, the original regional agreement states, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do this correctly. There shall be no less than one elementary school in each member town. Students in the elementary grades shall attend schools in their towns of residence, and it does say this line, except in special cases as defined by the regional district school committee. That sentence is what was in the original, two sentences, is what was in the original regional agreement. So, Mr. Russell, you're requesting, you have made the motion to leave that sentence, those two sentences
Exactly.
alone,
Yes.
and make all the other changes as
Yes.
presented.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Stout?
That little bit at the end, I thought said something about, like, for the purposes of special ed or something.
Well, that was implied by that statement.
That was a change, I believe, made in there. I can dig through my files.
I think it's much clearer when it said that, or implied that.
It wasn't in there. The wording, that wording was not in there. as to the best of my knowledge. If you would like to give me a second, I can dig through.
Okay, that would be great, because
Or maybe Mr. Duval will.
if we're asking them to vote in that loop that's in there, and it seems like it's a loophole.
Mr. Duval's more organized
We
than I
might have
am,
a
so we'll
problem.
let him pull out his.
As an add-on, Sharon, if it remains as is, excepting for the organizational statements that would be removed, if the statement states there will be one elementary school in each town, it does state, other than for special reasons. That's never been debated, what that means. Special needs children, one or the other. Oh, for example, let's say Howard Elementary boiler that services 4 classrooms went down. The school committee would have a special reason
Yeah.
to adjust that. So
If
I
it's-
don't see that
So,
as a loophole.
The actual, so this is
Okay.
the original, no red lines. This is
Okay.
the one that
Yeah.
has
It's
been.
happening right now.
Yeah,
Haha, I beat Mr. Duval. I just had to remember where I put it. That's the story of my life. There shall be no less than one elementary school in each member town. Students in the elementary grades shall attend schools in their towns of residence, except in special cases as defined by the Regional District School Committee. That is the original regional agreement that was approved.
I might have just thought of it because I asked the question and somebody said, well, maybe there'd be a certain group of kids that needed to be low incidence at one of the buildings or something. But now that this can of worms is opened up, it could be that people consider, okay, upper and lower, that still have their own elementary school, here's the loophole, we're not voting for it. So my suggestion would be to close that up so that it couldn't mean upper and lower.
I think at this point, we aren't in a position to close any loopholes with those 2 sentences without giving it to our attorney.
Okay, I think we should do that.
We are cutting short on time in terms of getting this to the selectmen to approve, and being that we're not making any changes to that section, we are leaving it as the original regional agreement
Okay.
as is.
I don't support that, because I think it's going to open a can of worms, and it has, for me personally, opened a can of worms now.
Okay.
So,
Well, the can of worms was back in 2010 when it was approved.
yeah, we
So I
just
can't-
didn't know of this, I guess.
And that segment has been reviewed by our lawyers. Past
The
lawyers.
original?
Yeah,
It was reviewed by the school district's
And there
attorneys
was no
prior,
loopholes at
and
that
the
time.
DESE.
so,
It could cost us to go with that.
We're not going with it, we're just leaving it alone.
I know. But,
Then
okay.
so the motion is to leave the sentences as they were in the original agreement and make the other changes in the regional agreement. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 2 opposed, Ms. Long missed out. Any abstentions? And the motion carries. So we will put forward a new draft regional agreement to the selectmen in each town to seek their approval to get on town meeting. Thank you. All right, moving on to our FY19 budget updates. We had our public hearing at our last meeting. There have been no changes to the budget since our last meeting. We are to vote on our budget at our next meeting, which is next Thursday, March 8th. So does anybody have any questions or points of discussion regarding the FY19 budget? Seeing none, we will close out that one and move on to subcommittee reports, and seeing none listed there, we'll move on to superintendent's report. Mr. Carpenter.
In terms of my report, just a quick little thing. I shared with the committee, I had success in at least defending my dissertation, and I had to torture at least 3 readers who got to read about my 150 pages on thoughts on school choice. It was kind of interesting in terms of the journey I took, because I started this before I came to Monomoy, and at the time I was thinking of school choice and was focused on looking at the METCO program, and had a lot of at least before I came to the Cape, had a lot of really positive thoughts about what that type of choice brought to suburban school districts. And, well, so I show up on the Cape, there's no Medco program, so I decided, okay, I might want to change my dissertation topic. And I sort of come to education as a biologist, and for me, it was this interesting difference between the way economists look at competition and the way a biologist looks at competition. So that became the crux of what I wanted to kind of dive into, because from an economist perspective, if you have school choice, that competition, based on economic theory and market dynamics, that competition will make everybody better, because competition is a good thing, and it makes everybody improve their game. And it was interesting to go talk with superintendents who came before me on was competition really helping them elevate their game. And I think in some ways every superintendent I talked to talked about some positive things that came about through competition. But a biologist doesn't look at competition the same way as economists, because in biology, just any freshman textbook on biology defines competition as a mutually negative interaction. So it was just odd for me that in economic theory it's looked at as this good thing. Well, it's only good as long as you survive, because in economic theory, if you're bad, if you're like a bad business, you go out of business. But school districts really, it's tough for them to go out of business. I think there's a couple examples of school districts that have gone out of business, and that's really bad for the kids. But it was interesting to kind of sort of delve into the aspects of school choice that really have been a little negative, that I don't think policymakers and legislators really thought about when they decided to enact school choice across the board. So anyway, it was fun to go and at least torture 3 people with 150 pages of thoughts on school choice. In terms of other things happening, just back to sort of on here, a security update. I said next school committee meeting, we're on a Wednesday night this week. We're back to Thursday next week. We'll have representatives from Chatham and Harwich Police to come and give you a little mini Alice training, somewhat similar to what Bill Massey would have given our teachers at the middle school today, to just update you on how we are training our staff and what we're trying to help our students with. But I think the long and short is, traditionally, you think of lockdown and teachers are shutting doors and hunkering down. And what we're trying to teach our staff and our kids to do is to think and be flexible thinkers in a crisis. So if you're hearing gunshots way over there, run like heck that direction. And so they'll talk about this run, hide, fight that we have given a presentation on 2 years ago, but they'll come back. And then tentatively, we would then have a parent university or a parent meeting on the 13th. We're still trying to finalize that with public safety, but we would have that either here at the high school or the middle school, that would, again, give parents an overview of what we're teaching the students in the buildings. But also, I think, given how things have played out in Parkland and other situations, to also spend some time talking with parents about sort of social emotional wellness and mental health issues in children, because unfortunately that plays a big factor in a lot of these situations. So we have that. We're having a crisis team meeting tomorrow afternoon, which is sort of some community members, district staff and administrators and public safety, just to sort of talk and touch base about the upcoming parent university and what we want to communicate there, but also kind of talk about the pulse of our community right now as it pertains to, to the ripple effects from Parkland. And immediately following that, there's a public meeting that is happening that Bill Burkhead has publicized, that he's having a Shark Tank where people will be invited to come and join a conversation. And we anticipate, given what has happened in Florida, that public safety might also come up, and I'll be there along with a couple members of public safety to be part of the conversation or to address any questions that come up. So we have those things in the offing.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, we will move into a couple of action items. First is the awarding of a year 2 option for a bus transportation contract for FY 2019. Ms. Isernio, do you want to say anything? No, say anything? We do have something in our packet explaining the situation and why we are at this situation. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Isernio? Ms. Long?
It's actually not technically a budget question, but I just was curious if because there were no other bids, and are they going to be updating to that new computerized system program where you can kind of...
No, because we'll be operating under the current contract.
Oh. Thank you. I just wanted to point out the obvious.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your efforts, though.
Ms. Isernio? Okay, so anybody care to make a motion approving the option? Mr. Duvall?
I move that we exercise the second year FY 2019 of our two one-year extensions on the current transportation contract we have with Jay's Equipment, doing business as Cape Destinations.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Duvall?
Do
Questions?
do I need to read out what those are, what those expenses are, or is just that good enough? Yeah.
I don't think you need to, because it's the second, you're just approving the second year of the contract.
My bird in my ear over here says no, we're good.
Thank you, ma'am.
So we have a motion and a second, yes? Somebody second it, yes. Any further discussion, questions, Ms. Stout?
I remember the representative from the bus company coming and a discussion that the computer program would change for next year.
Ms. Isernio?
Sorry.
We added that in the bid specs that would have been for the new contract going forward. So since this is just actually would be year 5 of that other language, it did not speak to that.
So is there something saying that the parents have been having a lot of difficulty about not getting where their kids are getting picked up and have that a good deal in advance of school starting? Is there some mechanism that's going to change for next year?
In the contract, it does state that we should be having our routes available on or around August 1st. And that hasn't necessarily been the case, but part of it is because we can't roll up our database until the Department of Ed certifies our present year, but we're getting, the system is getting much more efficient we have to give all of our year-end data to the Department of Ed. So we will do our best to get closest to that August 1st date, because we have not met that.
Okay, so we haven't been able to do it, so they can't do it on their end.
We haven't been able to give the information as early as possible, but it's also taking a little bit to get it back to us as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Combination.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. And our final action item is declaration of surplus equipment. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Somebody care to make a motion? Mr. Cruffy? Just kidding, sorry.
Pass.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody care to make a motion for surplus equipment? Please, Ms. Long?
Where are we going, or where are we going? Monomoy High School, this is tiny.
It's only one thing.
I know, I move for the disposal of the surplus materials, estimated value under $5,000, of outdated library books, copyright dates from 1933 to 2000.
Yes.
Quantity of 438 pieces from the Monomoy Regional High School Library.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Lo and behold, we have reached the end of our agenda. Would anybody care to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Anybody second that? I'm
Second.
sorry.
Oh,
Who seconded
second.
that? Thank you.
Doesn't matter.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nobody's allowed to abstain. That is unanimous. Thank you very much.